Yeah. He's like, I'm too high.
I can't be there. All right. Ladies.
Who you calling
And
a
me.
lady?
Welcome to another Bold Soul podcast. We are Bold, Brotherhood of Living Divinity, a nonprofit dedicated to repairing, uplifting, restoring men toward the divine masculine archetype. We've just sensed a crisis in masculinity here in the world, and although we're not the perfect examples of masculine men at all times, we like to achieve balance, hopefully, and take some responsibility in our healing. So with that said, my name is Tyler, co-founder of Bold, and I'm here with some others. We got Daniel.
My name is Daniel. Back at it again. I ditto everything he says. The only reason I know that masculinity is in a state of crisis was because it was lacking within me, and that's what brings me to where I am now. Not because I'm any kind of expert or claim to be one, but I saw that it was needed in me and needed in other men, and so we just started talking about it. We just started having the conversation, and now we find ourselves here we are, right? So
Dang.
Yeah.
Daniel coming out with a vulnerability gut punch right there. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then we got Josh over here in the corner. If you guys have tuned in, this is episode 6. So you might know Josh already, but
Is it
Josh,
episode 6?
It's episode 6,
That's
man.
crazy.
Yeah.
Dang.
Josh,
Episode 6.
introduce yourself, brother.
Yeah. So I joined Bold basically right at the beginning. I've been here since before we even knew what we were doing, honestly, just getting together. I didn't even know I was lacking masculinity per se. I kind of learned what that was the last 2 years, but I was just struggling personally, like heavily struggling with direction, what I wanted to do with my life, struggling with relationships with females, just, yeah, all over the place, up and down, up and down. So this group over the last 2 years has like helped me find a direction, helped me with kind of that tough love, like that brotherly bond that I haven't really had for a while, and given me some tough love and some good feedback and direction. And honestly, just growing with other guys has really cultivated a good energy in my life towards what I'm finding now, that divine masculine archetype, which is what I'm shooting for too. So,
Nice.
So yeah, that's been my journey over the past 2 years.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Cool, man. We're getting into it.
Yeah,
I love
we
it.
love you. And then we have our new and esteemed guest. His name is Alec Perry. He's one of the OGs of Bold, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I joined 2 years ago, within the first couple months of you guys starting the whole operation.
Yeah. Yeah, and Alec is, you're studying what, psychology?
Psychology, specifically marriage and family therapy.
Dope.
Super dope.
Yep.
When did you start studying that?
So I started that last year,
Okay.
and so that's been a part of my growth journey, being a part of Bold too. So, I mean, we can dive into more of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
as we get in.
I was going to ask you, man. Let me just ask this real quick. Do you
Yeah.
think you'd be studying psychology if you didn't join Bold?
So I was actually studying psychology before joining Bold, but I had graduated with my 4-year and was just aimless. I had no idea what my value was.
I'm just going to
Yeah.
bump you up there. You're good.
Oh,
Keep
there
going.
we go. Yeah, so I had no idea like what my values were, what I wanted to do, and how I could actually help people with what I was given, whether it's my gifts or my the tools that have been given to me. And so Bold helped me in the direction of actually refining that value, seeing how I could actually be of service to people, seeing where people actually need the service, and just applying myself in a way that we can do therapy for men. And I want to focus it, with the spirit of this group, I want to focus on group therapies, and I really want to target men's emotional and just a holistic view of their health.
Beautiful.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Alec also helps us with our what we call primal trainings. Primal trainings, along with Josh, are our bi-weekly offering to men to increase their vitality, basically around physical health and wellness. You want to tell us a little bit about that, both of you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, we started doing the primal trainings in May or June
Of last year?
Of last year.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so that started off, we wanted to implement a lot of natural movements that people have just kind of forgotten about. Like, there was a quote that kind of stuck in both of our minds, is that a lot of people have sprinted for the last time in their lives and not known it, not realized it.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's kind of scary to us, like just living that lethargic lifestyle, not tapping into what your instincts have actually gifted you to do. And we feel like having that pent up energy is maybe showing up in other areas where they're not being satiated in that way. So they might be, not being able to handle stress in other areas of their life if they're not just able to handle any kind of physical stress. They're not putting themselves to any kind of challenge.
Yeah, I think that the primal trainings provide a good release for men in a lot of ways. And also it's just good to like get grounded. We did a lot. We started with a lot of like outdoor stuff, like barefoot, grounding, basic movements. We did breath work a lot, stretching. And then we would get after it. We'd have like 20 or 30 minute workouts with a lot of body weight stuff, push-ups, squats, stuff like that. And then a lot of times we'd get into competition too. I feel like a lot of men don't compete like they should nowadays. And so we have a lot of games that we added to those too. So yeah, it's a bi-weekly offering along those lines. And I'm in physical therapy, so I'm going to be graduating this year, which is what gives me the qualifications to hopefully lead some people in some physical activity stuff. And then Alex.
And you're jacked.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
That's
you.
right.
bro.
that.
Yeah.
Can we finally get a good flex?
Let's
Josh?
do
Can
it.
you just give us one good flex,
I
bro,
don't,
for
I
the
don't
camera?
have massive arms.
Stop
Dude, what are you
being
talking
modest.
about? Dude?
I
Look
don't have.
Look at that! Look at that!
I don't have massive arms. Well,
Yes,
We're
you
gonna have
do.
to zoom in on that motherfucker
Right,
right,
right.
there, dude.
Yeah, that'll be in post editing.
Yeah, he's the resident Jack.
we
Jack
give all of
guy.
our members steroids too. So if you join Bold, you get.
TRT.
right.
Free TRD. That's right, yeah.
I
Well,
want
yeah.
to discredit Alec over there, man. He takes his shirt off, and all of a sudden
Oh,
he
yeah.
looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's crazy, man.
No, I
Yeah.
think he looked kind of like Clark. He's like Clark Kent.
There you go.
Yes.
That's probably better.
I've gotten that before. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
What he,
Even though
I
my
get
coworker,
Superman a lot.
dude, my coworker used to call me Clark.
That's crazy.
All the
That's
time,
awesome.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
I was just told that I should dress up next Halloween as Kratos.
oh yes.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Tyler
Dude.
said that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. It's actually been somebody I want to dress up for a while, but I've
Yeah.
been wanting to get my beard right. I've had
Yeah,
to,
so this
get
is
the
episode-
the right shape, you know.
It's been the same way for it.
No.
2 years.
I stare at it more than anybody, so it's like, okay, it's good. Now I like it.
Yeah, so this is episode 6 of hopefully 2000. So on episode,
Only 2,000.
well, maybe
Yeah.
we'll maybe go beyond, but hopefully on episode 55, which will be next year around Halloween or something like that. Maybe we
Oh,
can,
that'd be cool. I'm gonna dress up. We should do that next Halloween. We should have a Halloween episode, and we should all come dressed up. Yeah.
stay
I'd down
tuned,
that, yeah.
ladies and gentlemen.
You're ready for Kratos.
That's right.
That's dope.
Okay, cool. So we're going to be diving into some men's work stuff. So, most importantly, like, why do we do this work? Why is it needed? What is the crisis of masculinity? If anybody wants to take that.
Yeah. So I've been actually, interested in this because men's issues, they don't stop with just the man. They really go through and affect the entire family. They affect the entire community. Men's issues typically manifest themselves as women's issues, children's issues, relationship stuff, marriage problems. So if you're talking about like the suicide rates in men, you're talking about people that are losing a father, losing a husband. You're talking about sexual abuse. You're talking about domestic violence, all kinds of different things that men who have some kind of issue integrating with the world around them, that manifests in a really destructive way. So I think that we got to stop that at the source, however we can, like scoop up with as wide a net as we can, people who are looking for a better way, and it'll change the community.
Yeah, I agree. I know firsthand the difference a good father, husband makes within the home. I say that because I know that 3 years ago, without Bold, or like let me say without a group of healthy men in my life, my home life looked vastly different. Like my kids had anxiety, and that's because my wife had anxiety, and she had anxiety because I wasn't doing what I needed to do to make the home feel safe, and that's in multiple ways, like income wise, just like my word, you know, like if I say something, I'm going to pull through with it. My energy. Yeah, there.
You're kind of describing like this when we're easily like as a man that this gets into a big topic, but when you know every boy grows up through the feminine,
Yeah.
through the emotional nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at biology, every man is just an overdeveloped woman, right? Like everyone's default is woman, and then more testosterone is introduced to the body, which causes the clitoris to turn into a penis and all these other things. So it's like an overdevelopment, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's default is woman, and then you overdevelop into a man. I feel like what a lot of us boys are doing is we're growing up through the feminine because we're raised by our mothers. That's like the first kind of point of contact usually.
Mm-hmm.
And we develop all these emotional kind of things, but then a lot of us get stuck. We never get actually overdeveloped, and we never develop into the masculine, into the manhood.
Yeah.
We don't get initiated. So we
That's
get
right.
stuck in that emotional sort of thing where we're totally unstable. A lot of us, we gripe about women's nature sometimes because it can be very chaotic and unpredictable because of their emotional nature. But when we're stuck there, that's exactly like what you're describing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was chaotic. It was unpredictable. Yeah, and it I don't like to like blame my parents or anything like this, right? But when I was growing up, I had I want to be very intentional with my statement that I'm about to make because I absolutely love my father and he was a good father. But he has his own shortcomings and his own blind sides and his own shadows. And so, I didn't exactly get the example of a man who is strong in his masculine. My mom and my dad, they split up, and then my dad, he got with another woman. She was no good. She, she came into the picture, and there was abuse that started happening towards us, towards even him. He left her, got remarried again, and so it's just time and time again. What I'm seeing is the example that was set for me is like when things get rough, just kind of like bail.
Instability.
It was super unstable. Like there was no stability in my childhood. Let me say that. It's like I was like living out of a suitcase. 1 week at my mom's, 1 week at my dad's, and then after 8 years, then it was like then my dad was on his own. Let me say this: the 6 months that the 6 months between my dad leaving my stepmom and then him meeting the next girl, it was only 6 months. But those were like the best 6 months that I had with my dad, because it was only him. He wasn't concerned about a woman or being muffled in any way or anything like that. I just got my father, and that was the best time for me as a child. I remember. In a long-winded way, what I'm trying to say is that like I really had no example of what like a strong man who led his house looked like, and so I had to learn that. And I didn't even know that I was really missing it, it's easy to, especially like as men, it's easy to cast the blame on a woman for being chaotic, for being emotional, and being all the things. But when I learned that it really, like, the buck stops at the man, like it starts with the man inside the household, and it's like, how are you leading your household? And it's the same with our community. Like how are we as men leading our community? And if there's poor leadership in the house, the foundation, it's all going to fall apart.
I think you bring up an interesting point. Is what you were touching on, Alec, is that it does start with us, and I think that's a really important thing. Everything is downstream, right? They say this very traditional view, and Bold isn't really. We're a spiritual group, but we're not affiliated necessarily or tied down to any one religion or box. But we always look for the truth. I'm a believer in God. He's saved me from myself. But there's this traditional view of man or God over man, man over woman, woman over child.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing is this inversion of like feminine, the feminine kind of getting inverted or like above the man.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the plight that we're getting into it now, right? Is like the women don't want to be led, right? And the men are afraid to step up and lead. That's what it. That
Yeah,
was
and
my
that's-
energy.
And that's an important distinction to make, to point out the lack of responsibility that men are taking up. They're not taking up the burden of that responsibility.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be easy to be like, oh, the women they just don't want to be led anymore. But there's a lot of men who are just being bred in our culture to be incompetent and apathetic towards truth and actual values.
Yeah, yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I remember when I first had the epiphany that like it all falls on me, and if I wanted my relationship to heal and if I wanted, healing and love within my life and in my home, it was going to start with me. I remember the first thing that I felt was like, that is unfair. Like, that's not fucking fair, because like, why is it all on me, And I think, I'm not talking for everybody, but I think that would be kind of how a lot of guys would see it, is like, well, how does it start with me? How do I get her to stop doing XYZ? Like, that's her, but okay, but is it? I'll give you an example. This is part of the podcast. I'm always like very vulnerable here, but my wife and I, we had a lot of different issues. One of them was drugs, and I know that the reason why my wife struggled for so long to quit drugs, her use, was because she had crippling anxiety. And it really took like Inception level kind of thinking to think like, okay, well, why does she have so much anxiety? It can't just be that's how she was made, right? So I had to ask myself, and this is a question I often ask myself now, is like, well, what part am I playing in that? How am I giving her anxiety, and how can I stop? And I'll tell you, man, when I started maintaining that level of reflection and inquisitiveness, like inquiring, I started changing the ways, and just like anytime I would see that I'm the root cause of her anxiety in this moment, I started like trying to, fix that, for lack of better words. And the woman that she's just bloomed into is vastly different than the woman that she was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah. So Josh,
Not to take credit. I don't want to take any credit, but what I'm saying is,
what you're talking about is a form of extreme responsibility. You're just saying
Yes,
that you're
yes,
responsible
yes.
for everything in your life.
that's right.
Like if you see a world of chaos and all that, like, usually the outside reflects the inside
Yeah,
sort of thing.
that's right. Yeah.
Josh, what's your experience with this?
Yeah. So, first of all, I've had a lot of similar experiences like that. I had some thoughts about how there's like a major push for women to be like equal to men, or to like to do what men do. And I was thinking like, to push back kind of on that narrative, I think that men need to do a better job of like celebrating women for being feminine at the same time. Like, I feel like that's been like, instead of telling women like, don't do that, like we need a better job of allowing them to be feminine and celebrating that beauty, which I feel like men haven't. It was just a thought that I had in my mind. But in regards to like being in a relationship with a woman, is I often now really look to like where I'm causing either doubt or fear or anxiety in my relationship currently, because all of my past relationships, I was very unstable. Like I was not a stable person in my life. Like I just was very up and down. I would go through spells, like weeks of being like just really flat affect, like not there, had to retreat, had to like, like not, I just wasn't showing up. I wasn't showing up as a human being, as a man, to do my shit, whatever that is, whether that's work or life, or I didn't have a direction, didn't have clarity. And that definitely led to turmoil in my relationship. I even have relationships where I felt like you feel like you're slipping, you're losing ground with that trust that you have that your woman is like fully with you and supports you, where I feel like I'm slipping out of that place where they look to you for that security and that trust. I had a lot of relationships prior to this one that I would feel like that. And, I wanted to ask a question too, in regards to the word integration, because I think you said that when you were talking earlier. like, and if we're, and you were talking about how like we grow up as a woman initially and we become a man, right? And then we have these emotions, and how do we integrate these emotions? My dad, or our dad, me and Tyler's, he's not a very emotional guy, and so I always looked up to him in this way of like, you got to hold your emotions. You got to make sure you're not emotional. And so whenever I feel emotional, there's a response in me to not want that. Like, I'm like, I need to be stable. I shouldn't be having this down feeling or whatever. And I'm learning to grow through that, like to stand in whatever emotion I'm in and handle it. But I'm just curious, how do we integrate those emotions as a man and stay stable? And that could be a question for anyone.
I think that's a really good question. I want to get, so let's save that because I want to get back to it, because I think I have really good answers for that. Can you remember that so that we don't forget that? But before we get into that, because I want to ask Alec, because Alec, your upbringing was a bit different. I feel like you did have a father, a strong father. I know that he's a little bit different. So because you come off as a pretty stable guy. In most cases, you're actually pretty well-rounded. So tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, about my upbringing?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had my dad in my life. My parents were together the whole time. They still are together now. But he was, I would describe, a little bit too reliant on being like a very aggressive masculine figure. So while he was plenty strong, it was very demanding, very authoritarian, very limited in what I could and couldn't do. And so it affected me in the way that I felt like my worth was directly related to like what kind of performance and what kind of achievements I can get, like my grades in school and things like that, like things that are measured. And yeah, it really wasn't even my mom that had a big effect in my life, because she took such a backseat role to all this. It was just like my dad was like the head of the household, had the last say in everything. And yeah, so I ended up having a very like unintegrated, I guess you would say, feminine side of this, going into early adulthood and adolescence and all of that. Yeah, so I wasn't like emotionally integrated at all. Like it was very much like I had disconnected like that terminal of the car battery to emotions, and just had shut them off, because I only got to see my dad display emotions in a very aggressive way, or a very like overly loving way where he's like compensating for like past mistakes. But he wasn't at that level where he was vocalizing any of that. He wasn't talking us through any of that. So I just had to witness it and just kind of be more intuitive about how he was feeling, and like try to locate my own self-worth in that environment where it's like me, and I was raised with two brothers. And it's like each one, my older brother got like a harsher upbringing than I did. I got a harsher upbringing than my younger brother. So we got to see these like different levels of like how he raised us.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if you got more.
Yeah, I mean, it really, your original question, just about like how my upbringing is maybe different in yours. Yeah, I had very, very little expression and a very little range of what would be an acceptable expression of my anger, of my fear, and even happiness. You know, like if I was too happy over something, it was very much like, you shouldn't boast, or you shouldn't do this or that. It was very much like a shame culture around it. So yeah, when I came to Bold, I was looking for that missing piece. I didn't really know it at the time. I was really aimless. I didn't realize what I had been missing. But then through that experiencing process, through actually bringing my emotions out and letting them putting them on display in front of other guys, it really changes your relationship with them, because they're not these things that I should be ashamed of. And that was more of like a learning thing, that I had just learned to be ashamed of them, and that there wasn't actually any truth to that. It was just my environment. So that's something that I really cracked out of.
Wow. Yeah, I appreciate that. What's interesting, what I think, because this kind of ties back to your question, Josh, is that there's these two expressions of like the wounded man, right? There's like very I think what happened to me growing up was that I was kind of consumed by my mother's perception. I became like her. I grew up to kind of be really resentful of my mother because it's like I didn't have a father to go, don't worry, son. She can be a little crazy at times. It's just emotional stuff. Like I didn't have someone to like save me from my mother's emotional whims that were very overwhelming at times and kind of like these big waves of, it's just the nature of the feminine. They get things done through this power over the field, the emotional field, right? They can laud it over you, and it really becomes upon us as men to become stronger than the waves, right? Like to build a strong enough boat to withstand the heavy waves that are thrown our way through this emotional kind of, I want to call it, I say manipulation. But it's not a bad thing. It's just the way that the feminine works. It's part of that, and it's what we're all grown up through. A lot of us now, though, are left with dinghies in the water rather than having a big ship in order to kind of man the waves. So there's that form of man, which is overly emotional, completely consumed by his feelings. They don't have clear logic in the face of like difficult moments. They kind of tend to lean into the feminine. You see that showing up in the world today, where men are overly emotional and thinking with their feelings rather than being clear and logical. Then there's the kind where it's like you're way over authoritarian. There's no heart at all, and there's just clear, cold logic, like, well, this is how it's going to be done, and fuck your feelings. And so there's this balance, I think, that we're at a precipice of we're at a precipice of this balance that's kind of now coming into our culture.
Yeah. You know what? To go with your analogy of the boat that we're building, I feel like my life has been like, I have a boat, right, that I built, and then there's a big enough wave to where it completely wrecks my boat and it like completely breaks, and then I build a bigger boat, and then there's another bigger wave that knocks my boat down and it breaks, and then I'm building another boat. And I feel like that's been a lot of my relationships in the past was that I didn't have a big enough boat to handle whatever wave was coming at me. It doesn't have to necessarily tie to my relationships, but a lot of the waves have, at least in my experience of my boat's strength. So it's just been like a constant recycling of building a bigger, stronger boat. And this group fucking has helped me build a much bigger, robust, stronger boat for sure. I just wanted to share that analogy because it came to my mind when you were talking about boats. So
yeah, to try to answer your question, and to piggyback off of what you're saying, of the two type of men that you just gave the examples of, I was the former. I was the former in the way that I was absolutely operating in my emotions. When I got upset, when I was in my upset, there was very little logic that I was using. And what I didn't realize is that when you get emotional, when you step into that emotional arena with your wife, mother, women, right, you're always going to lose. Us men, we just don't stand a chance. When you're getting into the emotion with them, they have bigger emotions. They know how to.
Well, the waves amplify each other, and it's just a big ass storm.
Well, the truth is, nobody wins, right?
Right, because it's just a big ass storm. You need a boat. You need a big boat to be able to pull everybody on board and be like, oh, let's rest in the boat. Let's take some respite here.
And so, back to your question is like that's what I started doing. I started just practicing like keeping my logic in the difficult discussions, and I really learned that between you and I. We were able to have these really difficult discussions when we were first starting Bold. You guys were there, like you guys know and remember it as well as I do. We would have, they would consume the entire meeting at times where you and I were just having this dialogue of 2 hours, and they were just difficult, but there was no love lost. We maintained the logic in the room.
Right. Well, yeah, it's that both the mind and the heart are in the room.
Yeah.
Like you can be sensitive enough to recognize someone's emotional difficulty, but tactful enough to actually try to, help them pick up a hammer and start building the boat.
I didn't know that was possible. I
didn't
didn't know that was even possible. Truly. It was never exemplified to me as a kid growing up. It was just, if you get upset, you just vomit that upset out, you know, and you
Yeah,
just
and the bigger
point the fingers
the
and
bigger
yell
the
at it.
upset, the bigger the winner.
Yeah, whoever
it's like
had the
whoever's
highest
yeah,
emotion
exactly.
was the winner, you know.
Whoever had the biggest waves.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a huge area of integration that men need to cover, and like I mean, most people need to cover as they're developing. But yeah, I mean, just like I said, with the nature of man being more destructive when they're just not adapted to society, integrating the emotions and the more logical side is one of the domains of like left hemisphere, right hemisphere, getting those communicating to solve problems at a healthy level. So we're not like I think one of you might have just said it, but like maybe you didn't. But to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So it's like if you're just so right brain dominant, or sorry, if you're even more left brain dominant, more like logical and analytical, you can't go into like these. That's just having the logic isn't really a boat in itself. Like if you go into these really emotional, really turbulent areas with your significant other, whoever it may be, having a really rigid ship will break just as easily as having a really poorly put together ship. So there needs to be some kind of an element of the emotional chaos in your ship. Like you need to
That's
have
right.
respect for it
Oh yeah.
as you build your ship. Because
Yeah.
yeah,
You need
can't
to
be
you
too
need to
rigid.
yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying, and it's that balance.
You know, that respect word, it came alive, like for me, what comes to mind is, you say that in your ship, you need to have respect for the emotional and all these things. And I see that as being a big part of the problem as well, because I'll speak from my own experience. Whenever I was in a relationship with my wife or even my mom, like, you know, when she would get these big emotions, I would get this ick, you know, I would get I lost respect in the moment, because it's like, wow, this shit again. Like why are you name calling me, and why are you motherfucking me, and why are you like, and then I would just do it back. Well, fuck you, you know, and just all the respect would just leave immediately.
She was literally motherfucking you.
Well, who we talking about here?
I thought you were talking about
Yes.
your mom.
I'm going to say yes,
Okay.
because it didn't matter. It didn't matter whoever you talk about. Yeah, my mom didn't. She had no qualms to motherfuck me. Growing up, my mom had some high emotions, is what I'll say.
Well, I wanted to say, like, one of the things I've noticed is like, for a long time, like if my girlfriend or something, a relationship I had was going through something emotional, I didn't really know how to respond. Like, I didn't really know how to be, even if it wasn't a problem with me. Like, if it was just like an emotional problem that she was dealing with, I felt very much like I don't know how to respond to this, because I was scared of like however I was going to respond for a long time. I think it's taken practice. One, getting to know the girl, my current girlfriend right now, but it's taken a lot of practice for me to be able to sit and like be able to have her rely on me for that emotional stability when she is going through something. Like that was not readily, I was not able to do that. And it's been a massive practice for me, sort of building that stability in her life, so I can show up for her. But I'm just thinking in terms of the chaos of like integrating, knowing when to show up as a man when she's going through something emotional, you know what I mean? That is the chaos, and you're over here like, I don't really know what to do with that. Like, how do I respond to this? You know what I mean? Besides just hitting it with a hammer, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of that comes from validating the emotion. I'm sure a lot of you guys know this and put this into practice, but, validating how they feel and trying to understand their perspective and at least level with them on, how real that perspective is with them. And then you kind of redirect to something a little bit more constructive. You don't have to go and fix the situation outright, but
I always said it's like surgery. Like you have to first validate their feelings, which acts as the anesthesia, and then you can
That's
do
very
the
true.
actual surgery, right? So it's like a lot of us just want to skip to the surgery, which is like us laying on the table and the doctor just cutting us open while we're sitting there finagling it. So yeah, I've always used that analogy. Like,
That's good.
you got to give them the anesthesia first, validate their feelings. And it is valid. And I think that what men need to do is like what we always want to do is we want to acquire and understand everything, right? We're always looking to seek and acquire and understand. It's just kind of taking in to hopefully piece together some sort of mental concept to understand things. The problem with it is that once we feel like we understand women, the mystery stops there and there's no room for miracle. But I found what's been really helpful to me, which was kind of passed down to me through a mentor, is that you have to understand that women are these windows into the unconscious part of ourselves. This goes into depth psychology a little bit, but there are these windows into the unconscious feminine part of ourselves. And so only by like giving them the benefit of the doubt, like giving them granting them the not knowing, like, okay, there's this whole part of you that I can't really fully understand. And I'm just going to give you this mystery. Like, I'm going to say, like, there's a whole mystery in you that will help me to gain insight into myself if I just stop knowing everything about you, right? If I just can put away the knowing and just allow you to kind of show me something. Like, and that's a good principle for life anyways, just as a meditative practice, to kind of put away the knowing that you place upon the unending, unfolding newness of life. But it's imperative, especially when we're relating to the opposite sex, because we can gain access into our own feminine nature by giving them or granting them this mystery, where you can say, okay, there's something I can learn about myself through you.
Yeah, that was a big one in the way of healing for my relationship, because I remember being very sure of anything that what I'm trying to say is I had her in a box.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So, like most men, they're like, these bitches.
That's right.
Yeah,
and so
anytime,
anytime anybody would offer me any kind of like constructive advice or criticism or anything, like, well, why don't you tell her this? It's like, well, if I told her this, she would just do this.
Yeah.
Or if I did that, she would just say this. So it's like, what's the point? And then what I found that I was in a state of apathy. It's like, well, there is no hope for a miracle. And as soon as I got out of that frame of thinking, I got out of my own way. And I gave her that benefit of the doubt. I started saying the things that I ought to say and acting in the way and putting my foot down and all these things. All of a sudden, she started surprising the shit out of me, man. I was genuinely surprised. I did not think she was going to say that, or I did not think that she was going to be able to hear me, or whatever the case is. And from what I found, she's just so much more empathetic and able to have a conversation that I ever gave her credit for.
That's really cool. And I think that you're kind of talking about the nature of women is they have this instinct in them that is a lot of them don't even know that this is what's going on, but they have this instinct. Like they say, they'll fight you for control and hate you if they get it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's this, like, they're vetting you to make sure that you're actually stable and strong enough to hold on to them and to make sure that they're safe. So they have this natural inclination to kind of challenge, and it's what's contributed to the millions of years of evolution and polarization between the opposites, which is beautiful. But a lot of us miss that. We just see it as like, why are you nagging on me all the time? Like, and it's just like, it's a challenge to you. I
started looking at them as shit testing. That's what we kind of call it.
Well, yeah, it is that. It's shit testing.
I started looking at like, oh, this is a shit test right here. Like, she's giving me shit. She's going to test me here, And then from that frame of thinking, you're able to really kind of like, for me anyways, I was really able to hold frame. And now it's just who I am. I'm able to like stick up for myself and put my foot down if I believe in something. But it didn't start out as that way. It started out as just like, oh, this is a shit test. Let me see. Let me try to pass this test.
It forces you into creative thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is a huge benefit.
Yeah. Yep.
No, it is a huge benefit in dealing with problems like that. You're trying to tap into parts of the brain that you're not really the best at with yet.
Yeah.
But you mentioned apathy too, and apathy is really like the antithesis of creativity. It's like it shuts down any drive, any possible reality where that seems like something that you could even do. The apathy is just you're just dead on arrival with figuring out this problem. Like you're ill-equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way too when I was so disconnected from my emotions going into things, is that like I would go in thinking that I can just figure everything out. And if I could figure it out for her, then I've solved her problem and I've solved my problem. But it would be so devoid of actually understanding her perspective. It's like me just putting her in a box. And it was just rough. It's like battling uphill constantly trying to get, because instead of you just ceding a little bit of ground to the complexities that is another person and another gender and everything, instead of ceding ground, you're basically forcing her to come and actually see your perspective and how in the logical world everything is actually fine.
That's a big one too, man. Yeah, that was a tough lesson I had to learn, and it was only through her telling me. It was like, because if I would say something and it would like upset her or whatever, immediately without trying to understand where she was coming from or try to understand how that could upset her, my response was like, well, that's not what I was saying, or like, that's not what I meant. Like, well, I would assume that that's not what I meant, right? Like that, and then, but obviously she had to, and that was through a difficult discussion that she was like, I don't feel like you even try to hear me at first or try to understand where I'm coming from, and that was like a tough pill to swallow, So then moving forward, that's what I try to do a little better. Is like, okay, let me see. I totally understand how that could sound this way. I see how that could be upsetting. And I do apologize for like upsetting you or whatever the case is. Just so you know, that's not what I meant, But it only came first from the understanding.
You gave her the anesthesia. There.
I gave her the anesthesia.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, there's nothing more depressing and devastating than to come to believe that you know everything already about a person.
Yeah,
it's so devastating, and I've been in many relationships where I've come to that conclusion, and I'm just like immediately tired of them. I'm like, oh, what am I gonna? This is all there is.
Yeah, surprise is, you were talking about surprise. It's like such a good feeling when your significant other surprises you in some way.
Absolutely.
A lot of times it's always like really beautiful. It can be like a very beautiful moment.
It does require our, we have to allow there to be a surprise.
Yeah.
Like if we've already made up their mind about them,
they
could do new things and we won't see it. It just goes right over our head. And it just dulls the relationship.
Or
Everything
it stops
loses
them
its
from
color.
doing new things, Like, or you suddenly it suddenly puts them in a box that they're not able to actually escape it anymore because you've boxed them so
That's
much.
right. And we see it as their fault.
Yeah.
And it's so sad.
It is. Yeah,
and it's so sad because it's one of those things, like one of the things I learned coming up through AA and doing these amends process. One of the things I learned is that I didn't hate everybody for what they did to me. I resented people because of what I was doing to them. And it's a good way of seeing it is exactly through this example, is that I put them in a box that they couldn't get out of, even if they tried. And I had many cases where I would, at the end of these long arguments with my frustrated significant other, she's looking at me just like, teary-eyed, just like, for real, like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. Like, but she's not trying to claim victim of me. She's just so frustrated that I have, just put her in a box and just conceded, to my, like, yeah, it's sad. It's devastating. So it just leans into that. Like, we need to make room for the miracle. We need to make room for a mystery. We have to go into the unknowing. We have to allow ourselves to not know what may happen next. Mm-hmm. Give them the opportunity to show us a new side of themselves.
Totally agree. Should we shift to a different topic in relationships? Alec, do you have anything in the top of your mind that you want to share real quick?
So I actually wanted to ask you guys all a question, because we're four dudes talking about masculinity and femininity. And none of us are
total experts.
None of us are total experts. None of us have reached the peak.
I am.
Well, besides Daniel, but Josh and I haven't reached the peak of masculinity as of yet. So, my question to you, because this is something that, like, these topics are very popular and to people like in our circle, but sometimes when you go out to like the workplace or something, you start talking about these issues, and you might get, a response like, "Well, why do you even care?" And so how would you describe to somebody who's just completely out of the loop on why this stuff even matters. If I can just be a good person, I'm a man. I know I'm a man, so I don't really need to worry about being a masculine figure, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's about being a masculine figure, and that's not even what we preach at Bold. We're not here to like show men how to be masculine. Being masculine is a byproduct of just truth seeking and trying to
aligning with your nature.
That's right. That's what I was just going
Yeah.
to say is trying to be the best version of yourself. And because we're men, it inevitably leads to being more masculine, you know? However, like Tyler's level of masculinity is different from mine, is different from yours, is different from everyone else's. Like we've all got a balance within us, and some people are just naturally more masculine and some people aren't, and that's okay as well. We're not here to preach masculinity onto people. The biggest thing that I think that we kind of focus on is our relating function.
Relating properly and becoming authentic, becoming real
right.
human beings.
Well, that's how we relate to ourselves, right? I would argue, you know? And so, you know, my answer to that is like, okay, well, why do you care? And well, why even go through all this? Why can't I just be a good man? Because it's like, how do you know that you're such a good man? Yeah. I used to go through my life saying that, like, well, all my friends fucking love me. You know, my wife she'd be telling me, you got anger issues and you got this and you got that. And it's like, well, all my friends fucking love me, you know, and they don't ever think that I have any kind of anger, this or that or whatever. But they don't really know you. You know, it's like, how well do they actually know you? And so the people who know you the most, what are they saying about you? Do you have any regrets in your life? Have you healed the trauma that you went through as a child? And if not, how is that manifesting itself in your today, in your now, you know? And so really that's what it is like just becoming the best version of yourself that you can be. And that will eventually, from my experience, that will bleed into every other life that you come in contact with. And then from there, what starts to happen is they start to see that you have this level of like peace and serenity, and then they start to question like, well, I want that. I want whatever he has. Like, how do you get that? And then you start being a positive influence on your loved ones, on your community. And from there, we get to raise the consciousness of this entire planet, you know?
And I agree with that. And I will say that why do I care? Is because I want to live I want to create a better world.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that I wish that I was taught about these polarities, because I think what this whole experience and universe that we live in, or we find ourselves in, is it's duality. It's got these, you know, it ultimately is just one, right? If we want to get into these kind of deep esoteric topics, right? It's all one, but there's this dance, this yin and yang kind of happening, and it's found in everything. These dueling things, fear and love, and you know, Republican versus Democrat, it's male, female. It's all these polarities, and they dance around each other and grow by their relating and you know, synergy. It's this you know, it's how a charged molecule does work, right? Like Aaron Abke always says. But ultimately, seeing things through that lens and understanding that is such a game changer for me. It's like, oh my God, I can see it in everything. I can see how everything is made up of these dueling energies. And you call it dueling, they don't really fight with each other. There's a competition, but it's ultimately this giant collaboration and making and evolving and creating life that goes in the opposite direction of entropy, right? It's like going towards more order and beauty. And it's only through that dichotomy that these things are happening. And so ultimately understanding that goes so much deeper than just male versus female, but just in this, I'll just say that.
I want to bringing it back to the ground a little bit.
Okay.
Tyler gets a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a
very
floater,
big
dude.
picture. I mean,
I'm an air sign.
I love when you
Be out
your
there,
explanations are so beautiful and stuff, but sometimes they get so
big brain
Yeah.
spirituality.
yeah, they get so big.
Josh is a Virgo over there.
Super grounded.
Earth sign,
Earth.
All
grounded.
right, so bring us
But-
back to the ground.
Well, I just wanted to say, to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, like, I feel like I don't go out, like, necessarily preaching masculinity or preaching any of these things. Like, I feel like the only way that I can get people to see it is if I'm carrying myself in a way that people are like, want what that guy has, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And then we're able to share information with that person from there. Like being in, like I'm in college right now. I'm in grad school. Got one more year. Like I'm not talking about masculinity every day at the university in class, though if the conversation were to spark, totally. But the people that are like around me that gravitate towards me is because I'm carrying myself in a way that they're like, yeah, like I want what that guy has. Like that's basically what I would say. And I would say the reason that these topics are big is because I do think we find ourselves in a time where men are struggling. Like there's like, especially now being in this circle, we find men that are struggling a lot more because of the fact that we're around people in Bold. And I would definitely say one of the things that I'm finding like extremely meaningful in my life, so that I don't like, is like actually being able to help people through relating to people through my own struggles, and then showing them what I did to overcome those struggles. And then like you're saying, to actually help the world, to be a positive impact in the world besides just the rat race of trying to acquire and gain things, like actually be a positive influence on the world, which I'm like working on doing, you know, like I want to be able to help people. And so like the only way to actually do that is to show up as someone that would do that. So you just, who, like, you know what I mean? You picture someone that would be a person that helps people and is a good guy and leads other men out of their struggles on the right path. And then you actually go and just do the things that a guy like that would do. Right.
Well, in order to achieve that, you need certain masculine traits like discipline, excellence,
Action.
action. It's all those things that are inherently found in these qualities, which is why it's such a popular topic. Everyone's
Yeah.
drawn to this stuff.
It's attracting.
Oh yeah, and that was like
attracts.
we're talking about the harvest in our group right now.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of your big things, was like take action. This year
That's
is a
right.
big thing that you talked about. I remember.
That's been my biggest lesson of this year, and what I think most men could work on to close the gap between the thought and the action. You know, it's like, well, I probably should do this, but I could also probably fucking smoke a doobie right now and just, you know, not. You know, it's like, so closing that gap between the thought and the action is where I find my edge is, you know, and that's it's been game changing this last year, just because if the thought comes like, oh, I need to call that person back for this thing, I just do it in the moment. You know, I do it now. I just take action, and I think that that's huge for men, is to just take action in your life.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Engage.
Yeah, my well-being is definitely like, there can be so much clutter going on in my head, you know what I mean? But what I'm actually doing every day is much more representative of how I feel like my impact in the world is, my meaning in life, like how all those things that actually, I guess, fuel me, fuel my drive, my will to live, my will to provide is based on my actions, not all the thoughts and stuff that, you know, you're talking about. You've been doing these meditative practices, right?
Yeah,
that,
man.
like clearing out your mind.
Yeah, I've always been for so long. I tried to think myself into a better spiritual place, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I have to act my way into better thinking, act my way into better feeling. It always takes action, some sort of discipline, because ultimately this is the base level of expression. This is the fundamental place where it starts. Everything else is kind of up the hierarchy. So you have to do it here first, and then it kind of follows up the hierarchy, right? It's kind of, this is the root level experience. I'm going to take it up to the clouds again, Josh, going esoteric on you, bro. But yeah, like this is the physical expression. So everything has to have a corresponding, like all the levels, physical, the physical experience is the basic level. And then you have emotional, spiritual, mental, all these other kind of planes of existence. But without that physical expression of it, it doesn't mean anything. None of it has no basis in reality. So that's why action is important, right? That's why this meditative practice of deciding I'm going to do this every morning and every night. I'm going to try to gradually string together presence through this acting in the physical plane. And everything else follows, you know?
Yeah.
Totally agree.
I was often trying to think my way there or feel my way there, and it just doesn't work. What about you, Alec?
As far as the question of why I care. So I'm gravitated towards the fact that I care about the future of humanity, civilization. I think that having like caring about these things, about evident truths, like intuitive, natural things that you don't really need to study in a lab, that there are masculine and feminine traits, like these things are just intuitive to us. So on that note, I believe that there is a grand design. Like God did create these things. He created an order, a system where things hold each other in tension. Order, chaos, the masculine, feminine, action, and rest. And so I believe that if you live in a world of truth, then you need to acknowledge these things and kind of like really fine tooth comb all of these things for like what is actually the function, like what is in the code that I need to see to actually execute the mission that has been laid out for us in our existence. Like as someone who believes in God, that one truth, that single source of truth and energy, leads me to believe that everything has a purpose. And so for me to adopt the mindset of someone who's like, well, why do you care? If I were to adopt that mindset, it would be the mindset of complete apathy, which is a complete void of any virtue. The only virtue that I would have convinced myself that I have is that I let everybody do as they please, and I don't step on any toes, which is not a virtue, even though I've illusioned it to be.
So funny you say that, because that question, I can see that question is not really a question. Like, well, why do you even care?
Exactly.
It's more of like an invitation and
It's a cry.
to not give a fuck, right? It's like,
Yeah.
why do you even care? Which is like saying you shouldn't care.
Because I don't.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, man, I want to say like it's very powerful. So you shared an example, and I don't want to go into the example in the group the other day of like a way of like, you gave an example of how you stood up for yourself in the store for the principal. Like not like a deep example or anything, but like the
Well, we should give the
take.
audience a little bit of context.
Oh,
there.
Alec, can you talk about the example real quick?
Yeah,
Because
so
I couldn't do it justice.
It's really funny because it's so minuscule. So like I was at Walmart and there was a label on a jug of milk said it was $4. I go to ring it up and they said it was like $10. I asked the lady and she's like, let me go check that out for you. She goes back and she's like, well, because there's only 1 gallon of milk on the shelf, someone probably just misplaced it, so I can't like give you that price. And so then I was like, well, no, there's like 4 of them. And she's like, no, there's only 1. So she gets the manager and he goes back and does the exact same thing. And so I'm thinking, okay, whatever, I go back, I'm dropping off the milk and I see that like I was right there. There's 4 gallons of milk sitting there. So like just out of principle, I felt like they were lying about that. Like I felt like they were calling me a liar. So I went back and I was like, well, no, like I took a picture this time, like there's 4 there. And so they were able to like, give me the $4. But
That's right.
but like afterwards I was questioning myself. I was like, was that even worth it? Like, do I just look stupid and petty like in Walmart? Like these people don't care.
It's
But
not about the money.
details.
It's not about the money. That the invitation that you're talking about is to let go in a way of like, well, it's not that big a deal, and like just kind of subvert yourself to this not caring about it, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of invitations that I have to not stand on principle, like meaning like caring for something and actually standing for it. You just let it go. It's a lot of men do that. I'm a freaking do that all the time, where I like just give something up because I say that I don't care about it, but I really do care. You know what I mean?
I think you're summing up why our society has come so far to begin with. It's just this slow, painful death by 1,000 stabs. Like every little micro violation we've done to our psyche, where we've given up a principle or just let things slide. It's like now we're.
Yeah, that was the whole reason I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah,
because
it's
like
related.
it's like a micro, example of the problem that I think men are just not caring. It's that apathy that you're talking about. Just not caring. Yeah.
You had some questions?
We honestly touched on a lot of the topics that I had questions written for. Okay, so you're going to be a licensed marriage and family counselor. How do you think like the way traditional medicine and stuff approaches men's health It's just a question I could ask.
Oh, like prescription medications.
Well, it doesn't have to be medications necessarily. Oh yeah, the whole industry.
Talking about
just
Western,
just like
Western
medicine?
medication, yeah, medication, therapy, anything that
Yeah.
falls under the prescription, because you're going to be part of Western
You're gonna be-
medicine.
You're gonna be part of the
I am going to
system,
be part of
bro.
the system. Yeah.
Yeah, same
So now-
here. I'm going to
so
be
now
part
we
of the
gotta-
system too as a physical therapist.
Yeah, so we got to go in and then like change it from the inside out. No, but my view on it is that we're definitely over prescribing stuff. I don't care to get into that because I'm not an expert on it, but that seems evident to me, just like intuitive knowledge. Like we are just statistically, there's all these polls and different things on happiness and all kinds of different stuff that just shows we're on this like really negative trajectory. And then as far as like physical health and diseases and all kinds of more physical ailments that are plaguing us, like those have just been increasing too. But and even for like therapy, a lot of therapy, depending on where you go and depending on which state, because each state has different regulations on what is considered an ethical practice. A lot of states would prefer that therapists, in a way, affirm what the client, if they come in and they think they're depressed, you're going to do an assessment on their depression, and then with this assessment, you might diagnose them as having depression, and that might be helpful in one small way momentarily, but then over a numbers game, basically, you tell a whole bunch of people that you have depression, you've got a general anxiety disorder, you got all of these things that are actually kind of like natural bodily functions that are actually signaling to your brain something. Like something is actually needing to take place, needing to be done to resolve this. You're pathologizing that and making out the symptom to be something harmful, like a disease.
Yeah.
So we have all this really, like, access to therapy has skyrocketed over the past like 20 or 30 years. And everyone has just all kinds of ailments and all kinds of prescriptions and all kinds of problems, and they're hyper aware of it. But the hyper awareness has seemingly had the opposite effect, where people are still not doing anything with it. They're not resolving the issues. They're just kind of lumping it in as part of their identity and part of their story. But
Yeah.
It's kind of all based on this Rockefeller medication system where they've developed this DSM-5 of, like ailments, and they've identified all of them and then their corresponding prescription.
Yeah.
And then it's the nature of Western medication. But then, we look at our society and we're just like,
Well, that's
Sick.
exactly.
we're a mess, man.
Yeah.
We're like, not
Well,
doing
that's
yeah.
exactly it.
And the truth is that even like these prescriptions that people are being given, they're not doing anything to solve anything. All they're doing is they're just taking away the symptoms. Oh, you
Yeah.
feel depressed? Like take this so that you just don't feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right,
How is that helping
dad,
anything, you
when
know?
dad would go, well, get off your ass and do something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
when the father
Yeah,
come in the
yeah,
room,
yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, okay, well, dad's here now. We're not gonna let this shit slide. It gets so complicated. People just slide deeper and deeper into these diagnoses and mental.
And they give
complexes.
all their power away. It's like,
Oh,
Trust
well,
me.
I have this, I have that, and so that's why I do this, and that's why I do that.
Well, that's like I've been a victim of this in my past before, being someone who's gone to a psychiatrist before for depression, for anxiety, gone to therapy before for stuff like that. And I'm not saying there isn't a place and that I haven't been helped along the way. It's all part of my journey. It's all for a reason. But like I want to say in terms of like physical therapy, I'm definitely going to take to my practice. Like when someone comes in with pain in their knee, there's a tendency to focus on the pain, right? And almost like reinforce back in their brain that they have pain in their knee, when really what I should be doing is actually encouraging them that they don't have pain in their knee, because that's going to actually, in some sense, it sounds not like affirm, because you don't want to cut that tie with a potential client right out of the gates and not affirm what they're having, but we do want to have this like positive neuroplasticity idea of where you're reinforcing that they can.
Well, it's like
Or
the
you're
placebo.
leaning-
It's the placebo effect.
or where you're leaning into solutions.
Yeah,
Where
you're
like,
leaning
okay,
into
let's do
solutions.
this
Right.
for pain-free knee.
Right,
Let's do this pain-free.
Like maybe stop eating so much tomato, because it's like that causes inflammation. There's a number of things that you can cut out of your diet to where now you don't have inflammation.
Motherfuckers got tomato knee.
Tomato knee. So, well, all jokes aside, that's like a lot of our problems, especially with like pain and stuff like that, is caused from inflammation. right? And so then if you take away a lot of the inflammatory things from your diet, like tomato, like a number of other things, your knee pain could very well go away.
I don't want to do that. I just want to take Motrin.
That's right. Well, and see, now you're touching on a bigger topic too. It's like people don't want to put in the hard work. They don't want to stop eating the tomatoes or stop drinking the beer or all these things.
Or like go to primal training.
We have a lot.
That's right. They want their cake
Band-Aids.
and they want to eat it too.
We have a lot of Band-Aids
in
society today.
Yeah.
We have a lot of easy ways out.
Yeah, it's like, I can't sleep, doc. And it's like, well, what are you doing? What's your nighttime routine? Well, what's that? No, just give me medication. I don't want to get off the phone for 2 hours before my bedtime. I don't want to like meditate. I don't want to do any of these things to help me fall asleep. I want to be able to have the phone in my face and then just pop my pill and go to sleep.
I take 2 Ambien, smoke a big old doobie.
Yeah.
Masturbate a couple of times, and then I'm awake for 3 hours, doc.
Again, this is not medical advice for anyone.
Well, I'm not giving any advice. I'm just.
This is just regular. This is regular advice.
This is regular advice.
I'm only calling it like I see it.
On a gross scale of what's going on with society. You're speaking on that.
We're relating as regular dudes.
Yeah.
We're just dudes. Listen to anything we're saying.
Calling it how we see it, like Daniel said. Because I think.
Listen, just to give my whole validity, I don't mean to cut you off or anything, but just to give my validity.
Daniel always says that when he cuts motherfuckers off.
Yeah.
He always goes, I don't mean to cut you off or anything, but I'm going to do it.
But I'm going to do it anyways. My bad.
He's giving you the anesthesia, bro.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't ask for no surgery, motherfucker.
Well, now I forgot what I was going to say, so you go right ahead. You gave me too much shit.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Daniel. Okay.
No, but on a real note, the way that practitioners are encouraged and therapists as well, the insurance companies do dictate a lot of what is an acceptable practice.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So it's really unfortunate.
They
for
basically gatekeep, not at like the legislative level, but at the like practical business running, how are you going to get paid level. So they promote only evidence-based therapies, which are a very limited scope of therapies that don't include many other things like just basic mindfulness practices like meditation, like not really included. So if you're planning on running a practice and being paid through an insurance company, you better have the stamp of their approval on whatever it is you're doing.
Yep.
And it might just be more of symptom treatment, more of a Band-Aid. And you could probably talk to them about doing more mindfulness practices, doing other things outside of it, but you have to actually write up like process notes, progress notes on like what the insurance companies want to know, what treatment you're actually like prescribing to them.
I think you make an interesting point, because I got to say this. What I found is that the beauty and the magic of Bold, our men's group, is that we aren't bridled by any of these things. Now, obviously, some people are going to say, well, you're not accredited either, so you're fucking people up. Well, that's true, but we can take more risks than...
It's not true that we're fucking people up.
No. Sorry. What I mean is we're not credited. We're not accredited, right? We aren't like licensed, but we can... What that enables us to do is take more risks, which is necessary in a lot of this psychological healing we're doing, is that we have to kind of poke the bear a bit. Like these guys come in, they're guarded. They don't want to share they don't want to be vulnerable. They want to pretend and act like they've got it all together. And there's these things that we have to do to kind of, hammer and break down the walls around them, which you don't really see often in these therapy sessions. I could speak from experience. I went to therapists and psychologists all my life, and all we ever did was talk about intellectual things. We didn't really get into the heart of things. There was no real challenge. And there's this magic that's kind of, I don't know, what I've found, and I'm going to go up into the clouds again, but there's this kind of beauty in what the universe provides. It puts these opportunities in front of us where our protective devices are challenged, right? These things that we do to kind of keep ourselves, quote unquote, safe. It's like, we're all kind of like lions in a cage. We're going to be fed every day, but we never experience the freedom and risk associated with a free life, right? So we actually have to kind of break down people's cages a bit, and they may be scared and vulnerable, but I don't know, you just don't see that in a clinical setting as often. I don't feel
Well,
like.
the thing is like you're right, because there's more risk with a license, because you could get your license taken away.
That's right.
Plus, you have to get paid. I mean, as a physical therapist, I feel lucky that you have a lot more gray area being like a therapist, you know, a talk therapist to some degree, right? Like you have a lot more gray area, which can be risky. But I mean, I can only do if I'm, you know, hired by a company that has contracts with the insurance companies, and we only get paid a certain amount to do these select treatments, and we only get reimbursed for doing those treatments for a patient. I'm only able to do and provide that because if I have 25 patients in a day, and I'm getting paid for what their insurance company is paying me to do, not for what I would actually provide for the patient to help them. You know what I mean? Like, then I'm constricted. I'm very constricted in what I can actually do. Let alone, I can't really go outside of that and then do something to them that's not within a standard, you know, backed practice by randomized control trials or something like that I could base my practice on, because then, you know, I could be up for risking my license, you know.
That's
So
right.
it's
But it's
kind of sad.
a-
It's
yeah.
sad. It's super sad and that's why you're saying we can actually take risks, because we don't have anything
Right.
to lose. We're actually trying to help people. There's nothing to lose here. It's all
Right.
for gain. It's for what they're willing to take, the opportunity that they're
and you know
willing
what?
to take.
It's like the proof is in the pudding. Like that.
Yeah.
We have guys that have come to the group and they have found healing at some level. I've found healing. You have done
Yeah,
the
me
same.
too.
You've done the same. You've done the
Tremendous
same.
healing, man.
And you know,
Tremendous healing.
I heard something not long ago that kind of pointed to the fact that like the more credentials you have, the less you have to prove yourself. And so that's why you end up having like, you know, obese doctors that are telling you how to like lose weight and like, you know, what your diet ought to look like, although you can see that they're clearly unhealthy, but they've got the doctorate on the wall. Like they have all the credentials and everything. So just do as I say, because I'm certified and I have all the credentials.
That's right, man.
Maybe that's not what's needed anymore, you know?
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
like normal human beings relating in community.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah, we've kind of just made it all this kind of cold machine that doesn't really have any flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you're really encouraged to just trust the experts on all of this stuff, and there's definitely a place for that. If you break your arm, you know, like
Yeah.
go to the doctor. But
Of course.
at a certain point, like common sense has to come back into the equation, and people just need to take authority back for their own lives and just see, like you said, the proof is in the pudding. If something is not working, then do something different. Like you have your entire life; it's your own experiment. So, like act like you have some authority and some say.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when I first went to counseling and all these things, it was like my first attempt to try to fix myself. I was within a month, I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I was on medication. And I was on medication for 6 months, and I was just like a shell of myself. I couldn't feel. I just didn't know. I was just blah. You know.
I had that same thing.
Yeah, and you know, my friend I was talking to at the time, and I told him like how I was feeling, what I was diagnosed with, and what I was going through, and he was like, "Bro, like you don't have bipolar." He's like, "I've known you for so long, you don't have bipolar." And I was like, "Well, that's what they said." And he's like, "Well, fucking take your authority back. Like, how are you
That's
gonna let
beautiful.
somebody else
Exactly.
tell you what
That's
you have?"
so beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm
it
so
was-
glad he said it like that.
That's right. Yeah, and it was really like an eye opener for me, you know. And so then I stopped medication, and then I started doing my own research. It's like, well, okay, well then if I don't have that, what the fuck am I like? Where do I even go? Like, and then I started googling like kind of like my symptoms of my life, and it all came down to impulse control disorder, and they call it a disorder, but I just had problems controlling my impulses, and so then all I had to do was put a breath in between like my impulse and like my action, you know, and just
Yeah,
then I just started working on my breath work and working on my meditating and like being more mindful, and wouldn't you know it, I don't need medication anymore.
That's right, man. I had all
these
that same shit.
diagnoses are
Yeah.
just symptoms. They're
Yeah.
really just symptoms of the greater, deeper problem.
That's right.
Yeah, it satisfies this ego that wants to
Yeah.
kind of understand and say, "Oh, this is what it is."
Yeah.
It satisfies that part of ourselves and so then we can say, "Oh, now I know what it is. Now I have something to identify with." And that's why it's so difficult challenging people's medical diagnosis even. People come in and say like, I'm bipolar, like you said, and then you're like, are you sure about that? And they're like, motherfucker, yeah, I am. Like, they get
What are you,
really
a doctor?
defensive. They get defensive because now they have found this identity. Oh, finally I have something to grab onto. When the true nature of who we really are can't really be said.
It's not that, yeah.
Well, it can't be said at all. Like, I am. I know that I am. But as soon as I've been trying to find and understand and put myself in a box for years. Like, I am a musician. I am a podcaster. I am a founder of Bold. It's all these identities that I've been struggling to, or, just trying to claim my whole life. But we're so much more than that,
Yeah.
We're such mysteries, and we get to experience that in the group.
I am as God made me.
That's right, man.
That's it.
Alec,
You have any more questions for us?
questions or just
statements,
final
or
statements.
lead the
We've been
way.
going for about an hour,
Yeah.
probably over an hour and a
An
half
hour.
actually.
No rush.
Yeah, we're doing good.
I didn't.
We
have
can
any
make
other
this the last
questions.
one, though.
I didn't have any other questions. My main question was that whole "why do you care" thing. But
Cool.
yeah, anything else from you, Josh?
Well, I could ask another question. How do you, if you're a little bit more quiet and you want to get involved in a group, how do you do that? I ask that because I tend to be more of a quiet person. I know you tend to be more of a quiet person compared to these two loudmouths over here. So, so I'm asking,
right,
how do you
dude.
get involved in a group, and then how do you, how do you find meaning in that and provide and show up and like integrate and do that? I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's a few different questions kind of in there, but I mean, the first one, in order as a quiet person to get started in something like that, is to just do stuff as early as possible. If there's a group setting and everyone's going to do a check-in like we typically do, go first. That way you're out of your head for the rest of the time. Because as soon as you start getting in your head, like as soon as check-ins start on like that side of the room and we're circling around, you're in your head the whole time. You're not even really giving these guys like much attention at all. So just jump in, just take control of it, jump in, get through the awkwardness. And that's something that I had to do. Like, 'cause I work in sales, so like I'm really quiet, but I can like talk my product like all day, but you just have to jump in and like just wrestle down the anxiety and just taking the leap of faith will do it for you, like over some time.
I like that answer.
I like that answer too.
I always, when I first got into AA and I needed a sponsor, asking someone to be a sponsor for me, this was many, many years ago. It was like 11 years ago, 12 years ago. It felt like asking a woman out on a date, but with a dude. It had the same kind of energy. It required me to be a bit courageous, be bold, have you.
Be bold.
But there is, I think that men need that. I think we need to actually kind of take a leap of faith. We need to kind of jump off the cliff. We need to like do something that gets us out of our comfort zone. If you're unsatisfied with where you are and you just insist on maintaining this feeling of, safety in your own fear, which is such a paradox, right? Then you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to go against the guardian of fear, this fear that's like sitting there with a spear poking at you. You're going to have to like take him on. You're going to have to do something about it. You can't expect anything to change if you're not willing to, it's like I've heard before, you set your alarm at 5 a.m. and you get the fuck up when it goes off. And you experience the difficulty that comes along with that. That is you confronting the energy required to change.
Yeah.
And that's what's always going to be required. Some sort of fucking action that's hard.
Yeah. And it doesn't just stop with like quiet people. It's, as when the talkers come into the group, they got to like learn how to shut up a bit.
They're sitting there uncomfortability.
Yeah, they want to jump in and we're like, hold on. And he's like, well, nope. Hold on. Okay. And that's the truth. It's like, that's one of the cool things about, how we hold the group at Bold as well, is like we encourage the people that don't talk to talk a little bit more. I'm going to make you check in first from now on. And then, the people like Tyler and I that talk too much, we try to lean in and like, hey, just shut up and let them answer for a bit. Obviously podcast is a little different. We get to talk
Get
as
to
much as we
blab.
want. Yeah, we get to fucking blab too damn. Maybe we still talk too much. But
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm very grateful for any of you who are staying with us since episode 6, because it's been a learning
episode
process.
1 is what he
Episode
means.
one.
Since episode 1 all the way up to episode 6, because this has been a learning process. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm watching through these old episodes. I fucking cringe at some of the shit that I've been saying.
I'm probably gonna do that too.
It's such, dude,
It's
this
tough
is,
seeing
this
yourself.
is tough, man.
Yeah, it's
this
tough.
is tough shit. So I appreciate anybody that's sticking around.
Good thing we're tougher.
Yeah.
I was gonna say if I just wanted to piggyback. If I don't like, again, being someone who's a little more introverted, self-conscious sometimes, if I don't take on the challenge, it just turns into apathy later. That's what happens. You know, if I don't show up through the anxiety and just go do it, and I just don't do it, later on I'll just get depressed.
That's
You
that
know,
action.
It'll just yeah.
Dude,
It's,
That's that action we were talking
It's a
about.
defense mechanism. It's like a psyche justification. It's like, oh, it wasn't important anyways. You
Yeah.
know, it's like
yep.
That's
Then
not
that's
gonna
what
get you
that's
very
what
far.
happens, and then that gets stuffed somewhere. Any final thoughts, Alex?
I wanted to just get your guys' opinion on just the fact that we do everything in a group. You know, like the bold meetings, there's so much healing that goes on just simply because there's other people there to experience this. And this is something that's also true in the actual more clinical field. Like group therapy is a very powerful tool because it allows people to not only just understand this at an intellectual level, but they're living it out. They're getting to experience the conflict that sometimes comes along with it, and they're really able to challenge. Like I refer to the men's group as this playground, this like spiritual and emotional playground where my ideas and feelings can actually come out. And you know, if they're abrasive, they can be abrasive, and if someone else is abrasive, we can kind of bump heads and really like mold something that's even greater than the two separate perspectives. Do any of you have like any like personal testimonies to like how the importance of the group has changed that?
Shit, that's a big question.
It's
I feel like I
huge.
could start a new podcast right there.
Oh, very true.
But to kind of make it quick, I will say that my experience in the group has just been, it's been an incredible endeavor. It's especially just where I find myself in the group has allowed me to develop a certain amount of leadership skills. I feel like I'm forgetting the question. Such a big question.
I know that
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Hold on.
where I'm at in my business without this group and without, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just basically in your mind, in your eyes, how has the group setting made a difference in how healing this has been?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it's offered me is it's offered me an opportunity to display myself to an audience, and what that's allowed me to do is there's something that I dealt with for many years, and that was a kind of deep sense of lack. Oh, my computer just shut off and the light shut off. Shoot. I didn't realize that would happen. Hold on.
you hadn't before.
Pause.
That's all right. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. Whatever. A little darker, moodier. So what it's allowed me to, so what I've found is that I was generally a bit anxious about who I was. I was almost always a little bit insecure all the time, right? Every time I'd go to a group setting, I was like, oh shit, who am I going to fit in with? How am I going to show up? How am I going to be accepted? Those types of questions were kind of constantly buzzing in the background. That just isn't the case anymore because I have this group that actually knows me and accepts me for all my goods and bads and my flaws and gifts. And I'm just less anxious. Like, we went to this birthday party today with Edgar and all these new people that I haven't met. I just didn't give a fuck what they thought of me. And it's not even that. It's not like I don't give a fuck. But I get to actually experience them. Like, cause I'm not so self-consumed. Like I have this, brotherhood of men that know me. It's like I don't need now to be affirmed by this external world as much anymore because I've developed this relationship in a group setting, which has been the most valuable thing for me.
That's a good answer. Yeah, what I'll say is that what makes this group so potent, in contrast to like one-on-one maybe talk therapy or just like having your one friend that you open up with and then like I got my one friend, because a lot of people I got my one best friend and that's all I need. the problem with that, and the problem with like just speaking to one person and one person only, is that they've got blind sides too, you know. And so what I really enjoy about the group is that I could share something that, or I could be struggling with something or whatever, and when I share it, I might hear something from one person that doesn't really land, or maybe they're missing the point as well, and maybe it just doesn't resonate so much. And then Alec will open up, and he'll just drop something, and then it's just like, now I get it. So what I'm trying to say is that like different people coming at the same problem from different angles, it just leads to healing in a much better way than I've experienced ever before, of just like I said, just talking to one person and just getting that one person's point of view. And then what ends up happening is like if it wasn't quite satiated from that, or if I don't feel complete in that conversation, now I got to go open up to somebody else, and I've got to open up about it all over again. I've got to like completely relive it all over again. And then if it doesn't happen in that conversation, then I've got to go to somebody else, or, you know, then I choose to go whatever. And then I've got to open up to them about it. And then I've talked about it 3 separate times with 3 different people. And there's just like some magic that happens. Like when, like we said, when we're in a big group, and then I just share with no plan. And I just share what I'm struggling with. And because there's a dozen men in there, the likelihood that somebody has experienced what I'm struggling with is pretty high. And then they get to say, well, hey, this is how I overcame that. It's fucking, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I want to say I ditto completely both. I'm going to share an example. So I worked in a skilled nursing facility over summer, and these are people who they're in short-term rehab in a skilled nursing facility. I'm doing physical therapy, right? And they're struggling. They're like really struggling in the sense that like some of them might go to like long-term care facilities where they're not going to be functional. They're, you know, or they had injuries or illnesses that are actually putting them at risk of dying. You know, like this is the population I'm talking about. And one of the big things that like really I learned is the group interventions that we had with those people who were like, if I were to interact with them one-on-one and try to get them to do something physical therapy related, get out of bed, transfers, walking, any of that stuff, or doing exercises, so much more difficult. But if you put them in a group with 10 other people who are struggling just like them, man, they're so much more motivated because they see everyone else doing it, and it's powerful. Like, and that socialization for those people kept them living, kept them going, rather than wasting away in their room, in their bed all day. And then you're only doing therapy in their room. So we really, like, my clinical instructor, she was very much encouraging me to like get them into group interventions, get them to group, get them to coffee hour, get them to these group settings, because like that relationship, that relating in a group setting is so impactful on their ability to recover and get better. And I think the same thing applies to our men's group. I think it's the same concept in a different way. So
that's a great example.
It seems like there's a pressure to be accepted by the tribe. Like, you know, like for millions of years, we were born into tribes and villages, and, you know, with multiple people, you can't really get away with your own shit anymore. Like,
That's
you actually
right.
have to, you have to survive and fit in with the tribe. So it's like you put down your own illusions to try to kind of fit in, which sounds like a bad thing, almost like you're giving up a form of authenticity. That's not necessarily the case. It's just that you're allowing yourself to be seen or you're allowing yourself the opportunity to do what's necessary to fit in, which is kind of required for cohesion and family and unification.
Yeah, like we have this thing called sacred commitments that, you know, we make a commitment with ourselves and to the group, and if it's for that week. And so then if I'm explaining,
Yeah, no,
right?
it's cool.
So to touch on your point, so like if we're week after week, we're seeing everybody else is doing their commitment and they're staying committed to whatever they said that they were going to commit to, and I continue to fall short every single time, it's like, no, this time I'm going to do it, you know? And as we see what's been taking place is like, well, what I've been noticing is like, there seems to be like this, what's the saying? The rising tide, or I don't even know the saying, whatever. It's like we're seeing everybody within the group kind of rise together, and like everybody's kind of collectively doing better in their life. And so you almost become like guilty by association, you know, like your life starts to get better as well. You know, like you're doing great in school, you and your relationship is doing great. You in my business, my relationship is doing, it's just not even the same. My life isn't even the same at all as when we first started this group, nor is any of ours, you know? And so there is something contagious to that, you know, when you're in a group of people who are trying to be the best that they can be and they're doing it, then it something feeds off and you
can't
just
get away with it.
Can't get away
It's
with
like,
it, you know?
Yeah.
It's not even about what you were saying. It's not about fitting into the tribe. It's about the tribe making you useful for the world. You know what I mean? Like that's
100%.
You know what I mean? It's that's
part.
that's what.
Well, there's a
you're-
pressure on you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can't get away with your own shit anymore. Like you need to actually, you need to be accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Alex, that was
important.
a really good, thanks for bringing that up.
What about you? You got an answer?
Yeah, man. What's your opinion on it?
Oh, man. What was the question again? It was my question. It was my question. we were
What is
Yeah,
the group?
What's the benefit of the group?
Yeah.
the group.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I mean, just the fact that it's literally an experiential form of therapy where you're literally experiencing the principles that are being talked about in real time, and if you don't at first, that's fine, you know, because at first we come in with our illusions still intact, but it's only a matter of time. Like you're exposed to them over and over again, that those illusions start to be evident to you that they are illusions, because everyone else, we can usually see it when someone comes in fresh and not really wanting to share the actual vulnerable parts, but just like certain vulnerable parts. And we might, you know, pick away and ask, you know, deeper questions to get to the root of this. But yeah, it's just a matter of time before they actually experience that aha moment where
That's right.
everything I came in with was kind of a lie. That was like my own narrative that is actually harmful to me. It's a pathological pattern of behavior that this narrative actually is. It's allowing me to justify isolating myself. It's allowing me to justify, you know, really cold, standoffish behavior with people. And that's all this. I mean, there's a lot of different concepts that touch on this, like the mindset of scarcity being like, well, if he gets attention, then that's less attention for me, that kind of thing. Like people have these narratives and just cultural kind of like altruisms where it's like, I don't know if they actually believe that, but it's just something that's like culturally enforced, you know? And so being in the group experience, yeah, it's really raw. So like,
That's right.
and it's almost like you want to get called out. Like if no one is really calling you out, it's kind of a question of like, are you actually open? Like, do they feel like they actually know you and that you're safe to actually approach in this way? Because
That's
it's
right.
vulnerable for the person calling them out. That's a vulnerable spot to be in, to call someone out, because we're not the arbiter of truth in that person's life, but we want to help them. So you need to also understand that you should want to be approached in that way. Like you should want someone to care. And this comes kind of back full circle. It's like, well, why do you even care? Well, I want you to succeed. You know?
Yeah. I care enough about you than I do your feelings in the moment.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I'm willing to hurt your feelings because I love you enough.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's something that's all, you've said that a few times to a few people, and I fucking love that line. I care more about you than I do your feelings. You
Yeah.
know, that shit's powerful.
Well, it's very true. And it's like the masculine urge to tap into that,
Yeah.
to punch you with my heart.
Big old punch, heart punch. I love it.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close us off.
Yeah.
This has been a great episode. I feel like really we're kind of getting the swing of things now.
think
This is
so.
really good.
Yeah.
I think we should probably take this to CMAC. We'll see what they say.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Absolutely, Alec. Thank
Listen,
you.
Thank
we
you,
are
Alec.
grateful
Yeah,
for you coming
seriously.
on. Truly. Thank you.
We'll do this again, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Come on again, bro.
seriously.
Tomorrow?
But with that being said, we are Brotherhood of Living Divinity. Please check us out, brotherhoodoflivingdivinity.com. You can reach out to us on that. There's a text chat feature that actually contacts me. We have our business phone number on there. You can call us. We have our intake form on there if you want to join. If you're local in the Fresno, Clovis area, please, come and see us or give us a call and we'll get you looped in. We're opening up a new group here soon. It's kind of brand new. I haven't talked about that yet, but
Oh, man. Oh, man.
oh man. So yeah, we're looking to make this as accessible as possible. And if you're in a far off community and you actually are looking for a way to start your own group, we are happy to share our resource with you because this mission is, bigger than just us. So, we'd love to help you get launched. Yeah. Anything else, you guys? All done?
No,
Is that it?
no,
Cool.
I'm good.
Yep, I'm
Alright.
good.
All right, with that, we're out.
Deuces.
Peace.
Now this is when the music starts.